Welcome to Soul Steps with Dr. Ren. I'm your heart-to-heart walking companion. These short, soulful reflections come straight from my morning devotion walks. Think of it as a chat with your bestie that feeds your mind and spirit. Walk with me or just listen and get ready to feel uplifted, informed, and inspired. Good morning, friends. Happy Friday. I've got my purple West Point gear, which might be the greatest thing that's ever happened. It is the 250th anniversary of the Army and the inclusion of the color purple in the motif of West Point gear. I wish they had more. I wish they had a purple dress with gray. I would get all the purple things. Today is going to be a very quick soul steps because I am going for a colonoscopy later today. So I'm in a very tenuously risky scenario where I have on adult diapers, courtesy of my late sister Aziza. You see, grief can be great sometimes. Sometimes grief will keep you from clearing out medical supplies that you just don't know when you're going to need or fit. Because she was small, and this was a size small, but they're doing the job just in case there's a little oopsie. Pro tip, I had like the gross prep, the peg type of prep, and it was so disgusting. I wish they would just give you like straight Miralax, and then I could have just added my own electrolytes. But the syrupy, fake sweet, like consistency of the prep was definitely making me nauseous last night. I got through only like a quarter of it, and then I was like super sleepy, so I kept falling asleep and waking up and being like, oh crap. Well, literally. And then I got my husband to bring me some apple juice, and that helped kind of, because at least I could, like, I don't drink juice like that. It was very sweet, also syrupy, but at least it had a flavor that I could manage. And I mixed regular Miralax. I had like 6 capfuls of that with the apple juice, had some sparkling water, mixed my electrolyte water drink. And then I got up at like 3:30 and then started drinking some more. Kind of could drink it a little faster because I was actually thirsty. But it wasn't like running clear. So I was like looking up, how do you know when your colonoscopy prep is finished? And it's supposed to look like urine. It's supposed to be yellow and clear. So I was getting kind of close to 4 hours before the procedure, where you're supposed to, be NPO, nothing by mouth. So I just kind of hit it real hard and drank about maybe 6 or 7 8-ounce glasses of the PEG solution, like half of it PEG, half of it apple juice. And then it started to run more clear. At least I could see the bottom of the toilet bowl, which is what they say. And I think during the procedure they can do suction, and they have some techniques to improve visualization. They can flush out an area, but it's not going to be like squeaky clean, as if I, probably if I had to, when I do this again, which is not until 5 years from now, hopefully, I'm going to start fasting like 3 days before from solid food, because I feel like that'll definitely help. And I'm going to start taking Miralax like 3 days before, just regular Miralax. And then I think it'll be a better process. Because I can fast, but drinking that stuff, I already don't feel good with all the sugar that is in my stomach. So But I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to walk today because of, needing to be near a bathroom. That's why I was like, let me just be safe and put on a diaper and keep that sphincter tight. And I don't know if I'm going to get through my whole walk. We'll see. But I did listen to my scriptures and my other readings this morning, which, I don't know, I was just like a little distracted. So, but I did want to share a word with you today about the biases, because the Center for Action and Contemplation newsletter, highly recommend. I get it every morning. It comes like in the middle of the night, so you can read it the first thing when you wake up, even if you wake up early. And they're going on about Brian McLaren's different biases. Today, there was a little reading about the contact bias. This is really important. This is important for elimination of stigma, and it's important for really the elimination of prejudice, stereotypes. So I remember learning about this concept from a sociological perspective and thinking about the ways in which communities are formed and how their social ties are structured. I mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but it's worth going back to. So if you have social structures that have strong ties, closed borders makes it such that it's going to be very hard for you to know people outside of yourself, and it really promotes othering, because you can maintain an other idea if you don't have contact. That's also, around the contact bias. If you have strong loose ties, strong boundaries. Sorry. It's been a while. It's been since like 2011 that I read this. There's something about the boundaries and the ties. I'm just going to go with the ties. Loose ties means that your boundaries are open enough that you can kind of connect to something outside of your social structure. So this is a very embarrassing example, but I'm going to share it. Because again, I still got less than 50 followers, so y'all probably all my friends anyway, or family that are listening. But I grew up with a lot of conservative Christian ideology, evangelical Christian ideology, and grew up believing that people that were in relationship with same-gendered people were going to go to hell. They were sinners just like us, but that was like particularly bad of a sin, and that you couldn't go to heaven if you were living a homosexual lifestyle. I entered into the military during the data era, the don't ask, don't tell era of the military, the Clinton years, where it was sort of like, you don't ask, we won't tell. So there was still a ban on homosexuals in the military. And then I became a psychiatrist. And I was always like, love God. I was one of those like nice interpretations of bigoted Christians where it was like, well, we're all sinners saved by grace. And if you're living this way, you do need to repent, but, you're still God's child. Which is kind of low-key. It's not acceptance. And a lot of trash cans out today. Trash trucks. So I was already a psychiatrist. I was doing a fellowship. And the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in the policy news. And I was doing like a health fellowship. Public health related fellowship. So one of my colleagues, who was gay, and I feel like this has got to be before marriage equality. I don't remember what year that was. I'm pretty sure it was before marriage equality. So he was partnered, and we were having a debate about don't ask, don't tell. Should it be repealed? I was the only person. It was a very liberal, it was Penn, very liberal environment. I was a conservative. I've been a registered Republican my entire life. I actually don't know how to change the registration status. So even though I don't often vote Republican now, I'm still a registered Republican. It's very weird. But anyway, back then I was legit like believing in a lot of conservative values. More so, you can't legislate morality, but we should uphold conservative values wherever possible in politics. So I was the only one in the military or with a history of military service in the conversation. So I was taking the position of, you guys don't know what it's like to be in the military. You don't know what it's like to be in the field, you know, and you're like in the field, same gendered. There's like issues that could happen. I don't even know. I can't even remember my argument because it was not very sophisticated, but it was basically like the military is a special environment, and there's a reason why it's a threat to the force to have, you know, people that are gay in the military, something along those lines. And my colleague was like horrified, and he was very kind, and he said something to the effect of like, I respect you so much, but what you're saying is like really breaking my heart, that you would say that if I wanted to serve in the military, which I don't, that I shouldn't be able to. That really hurts my feelings. And of course, like any good bigot, I was like, oh, but I don't mean you specifically. I don't mean you specifically. And it's not about you personally. It's really just the gays as a whole. The gays as a whole can't be trusted in the military. It was not my best moment. But I will say that contact with that individual and that conversation really, truly changed my mind. That was the first time I was ever challenged in a way that caused me to really question my own way of thinking. And then years later, my nephew came out as being transgender. So my nephew was born biological female and was one of two children born by my oldest sister, who is now deceased. And I remember specifically, I was in Atlanta. I was driving down 20 when we were having a conversation. Now, this nephew had, you know, some mental health issues. I'm not getting into it because that's his story to tell. So I had been involved in their life, and they were having a significant amount of distress over people's reaction and lack of acceptance of their transgender status. And they were actually to the point of on hormone therapy and male presenting. So I had a conversation, and I said something along the lines of like, you know, you've been transitioning and living as a man for X amount of time in college, but the family is still not transitioned. So I think you got to give us time to transition as well. And, you know, certain people in the family that are more adamant about criticizing and dead naming you and misgendering you, you may have to let that person go, which is what happened. So what's better, to be in relationship with a loved one who you may not agree with something that they're doing, or completely lose relationship with them? So, but my contact with my nephew really kind of quickly disintegrated the remainder of bigoted ideas that I had regarding people that were transgender, whatever I had picked up along the way. Contact. this is also true for mental health. If you have never known anybody that had a substance use disorder or had psychosis, you just only know what you know in movies. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or Girl Interrupted, or, Silence of the Lambs. Who knows where you're getting your information from? So a lot of societal stigma is perpetuated by the lack of contact. That's contact bias. So it's very easy to maintain stereotypical views. Hey, 15-minute crew, y'all are done. Congrats. But hang with me for a few more minutes. So contact. If you are, I talk about this in the context of the civilian military cultural divide. Do you know it's like only 1 or 2% of the whole population has ever served? It's not that much. So, and it's very concentrated in certain states. I live in Georgia, the largest population of female veterans in the nation. It's a very military-friendly state. You could go up and down the street. Right across the street is a veteran. But like where I was in Philadelphia, it wasn't nearly that much. So you could live your whole life and just never know somebody that served in the military. So when you're trying to understand military policy or anything related to the military or veterans, now I will say with respect to veterans and doctors, like most every doctor has trained at a VA. I mean, I don't know if it's 100%, but it's an extremely high number. But still, when you're training the VA and you don't have a military background, it is very difficult to become informed about military culture. Now, there are great organizations now, like the one started by my friend Marjorie Morrison. She started Psych Hub that provides basic education to providers, community members regarding military service. There's one of the courses, free courses, something like 10 things veterans want you to know, something like that. Great introduction if you do not have any military cultural competence. So there are tools that can help you develop competence in cultures that you were not exposed to. There's also the principle of cultural humility. That is a posture of inquiry and curiosity and humility when you are entering into a culture that you're unfamiliar with. So like not a couple months ago, it was like Tibet week or something like that. And I went to some sessions. They had Tibetan monks there. They were doing a mandala out of sand. They were chanting. And, so I remember I looked up some things about the culture before I went, like some customs and so forth. So cultural humility is a great practice, great posture to have. And another part of cultural humility, though, is about righting the wrongs of a system. I was also reading an article yesterday about the person who coined the phrase mansplaining. And the story goes, she was at a dinner party and she had written a book about a historical figure, I think. And somebody was like, oh yeah, she just wrote a book about so-and-so. And this man was like, oh, have you heard about this great book about so-and-so? And he went on to explain her book to her. And someone was like, that's her book. And he kept going. He didn't catch what was happening. And they were like, she wrote the book you're talking about. And then he didn't have like a mea culpa moment. And that's where she wrote an essay about her experience, coined the phrase mansplaining. And she goes on to talk about how different things, like where our norms set, like history written from the perspective of male view, and then women's history is a subgenre. literature written by man in power, women's literature subgenre, so that somehow the normative anchor point becomes the male perspective when, but those phrases are, they're communicated as neutral. So this is kind of related to the concept of privilege. And, if you have issues understanding and appreciating privilege, then I would challenge you to think about handedness. So if I'm right-handed and we live in a right-handed world, and most of us that are right-handed do not ever think about or are aware of the privileges that we have as right-handed people. It's comfortable when we shake hands. We're doing a craft project and the scissors work fine. We don't smear our paper when we write. Clocks are oriented in a rightward direction. All kinds of different things. I have one child who is left-handed, and I did not become sensitive in any way, shape, or form to the privileges of being right-handed until I had a son who was left-handed, and I had to teach him how to tie his shoes. So hard. Had to teach him how to write, how to use scissors. And so when I give workshops about health equity, I say, tell that story, and I say, so how many of y'all got right privilege? Kind of cute because it sounds like white privilege, and I'm clearly not white. The people get a little nervousness until I start laughing and say, yeah, I got right privilege. How about you? So it's a very easy concept to understand when you think about handedness. You take out all the layers of, feelings that might be associated with, racism. So anyway, but that's another example of contact. When I had close contact with a lefty, I became way more sensitive to their experience in the world and the ways in which our world is not made to make them feel normal, welcome. This is really big. And one of the reasons why I want to write the book More Alike, because I believe that if I do it well, which I believe that I can write a really good book about it, I will introduce some faith traditions to people who have never had contact with that faith tradition. They may be believing things that are untrue. They may have a lot of lack of knowledge about that faith tradition that reinforces prejudicial, stereotypical viewpoints. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. Honestly, I could go back to sleep, and I do think I'm going to go home and take a nap. I am really debating right now whether I'm going to do the second stretch of my walk, because I have to walk past my house to get to the second stretch. I don't know. I'm feeling kind of iffy, Annie. But I know it's going to feel good when I'm done to be done. I know it's going to bother me if I don't finish my normal walk, which is between 3 and 4 miles. It's usually 3.7 miles. That's about my route, depending on if I go to the first light, the second light, I'm going to feel agitated because I am a creature of habit and I like my routines. And if I cut short my routine, I'm going to feel, a little agitated. So we'll see. But as for you, hope you got something out of today. I hope you have a great weekend. It's the last weekend before Thanksgiving, so you're going to get your turkeys. You're going to thaw all your turkey. Get all your... I'm going to go shopping. All I'm making is Brussels sprouts this year. So I'm fortunate enough that I found a friend who's got a big family gathering planned and welcomed my family of 6. We always make enough food for everybody at Thanksgiving. So I hope that you take some time to reflect on gratitude, that you have a great weekend. And remember to move your body with love and intention today. And of course, remember that I love you. Bye.